Hello, hello, Uncle. I'm in a meeting. I'll call you back after the meeting.
Good morning once again. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Thanks for joining in today. We're about to start. It's almost 10 o'clock. So before we start, please, if you have questions during the webinar, please put them in the question and answer box, not the chat box, the question and answer box, so that we can attend to them. So welcome once again to the second day of the Maize webinar, Maize Value Chain webinar series. Okay. So moderator. Our moderator today is Miss Bemisola Alonge. She's going to be moderating the whole thing. She's the financial journalist, macroeconomy and development at Steers Business. And she'll be moderating the webinar today. So it's 10 o'clock. I'll be handing over to her. Thank you once again for joining, Ms. Bemi.
Thank you for having me. And welcome to everyone for joining us. Thank you for taking our time to have this conversation today. Like she introduced, my name is Bemisola Alonge, and I'm an economist and financial journalist with Steers Business. Today's discussion will be focused on understanding the extent to which the restrictions on Forex for the importation of maize has impacted the poultry sector, what alternatives exist for them now, and what opportunities or gaps would have to be filled as a result of this policy. With me today, I have a group of experts and thought leaders who will be contributing to the conversation. So first, we have Mr. Onalu Apa, who is the Director General of the Poultry Association of Nigeria. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Apa. Ms. Apa. And then we have Engineer Olateru. Engineer Olateru is the Assistant National Secretary of the All Farmers Association in Nigeria, the Oyo State Chapter. We have Dr. Tunde Amole, who is the country representative of the International Livestock Research Institute with us today. Thank you so much, Dr. Tunde, for joining us. Mrs. Blessing Alaude is with us as well. She's the chairperson of the Poultry Association of Nigeria, Oyo State Chapter, and the CEO of the Emirs Farms. She'll be speaking to us today as a business owner, a poultry farm owner. We have Mr. Jesse Osiobe. He's the CEO of FarmCart Foods, an agri-tech company that crowdsources funds for investment in agriculture. Finally, we have with us, he'll be joining us later, Mr. Abiodun Okunla, who's a principal manager at the Anchor Borrowers Program. Oh, he's here with us already. Okay, so Mr. Abiodun Okunla is the principal manager at the Anchor Borrowers Program unit and the team lead of the Poultry Working Unit at the Central Bank of Nigeria. Thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to having a nice conversation with you, an enlightening conversation. So we would start with Mr. Abiodun, since he's with the CBN and he has an understanding of the policy. We would like to know what the rationale of this policy was, especially from the angle of a poultry expert. Okay, and before that, we would first speak with Mr. Onalu Apa, the Poultry Association of Nigeria DG. I imagine that this policy has dealt a large blow on the poultry farm sector, or poultry farming sector. So I'd like you to just explain to us how bad has it been in 5 minutes. Just tell us how bad has this policy affected the poultry sector. Mr. Onalu. I think you're muted, sir. Please unmute yourself.
Okay. I've muted.
All right, sir. So I was asking, I was saying, I imagine
Can
that
you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, sir. All right.
Yeah, I thought you asked Mr. Biodu to speak on the perspective.
Oh, yes. So before Mr. Abiodun speaks, I'd like you to explain what the impact of this policy has been on the poultry sector. So I imagine that it came as a shock to the sector, and different farmers have had to do different things. So how bad exactly has this been on the poultry sector?
Well, I think the policy has completely and negatively affected the poultry industry, worse than anybody has expected in the last 15 years. We had this similar situation in 2015, 2016, but the devastating effect is not as bad as this one is because it came all of a sudden. The price of maize had been stable throughout the whole of last year and then the first 2, 3, 4 months of this year. But all of a sudden, the price of maize jumped to over 100%, and this took most of the poultry farmers unaware, coupled with the lockdown effect of on the poultry industry and the economy. So today, if you look at all the sectors of the poultry industry, it is completely affected to an extent that we're having problems. Most of the farms are closing down now because they can't afford to feed the birds. And those that can afford to feed the birds are feeding the birds at debits because most of the farmers are not making profit. There are no margins and there is no need of continuing business when you cannot make margin. You cannot make a breakthrough. So this is the summary of how bad it is with the poultry industry.
All right, thank you, Mr. Onalo. Mr. Abiodun, would you please just run us through the rationale behind this policy? Why did the CBN, what impact did the CBN expect on the poultry industry, and what was the reason behind taking this policy?
All right. Good morning, everyone. I think the first thing we need to clarify, CBN did not ban importation of maize. All CBN did was to say it wasn't going to allow access to forex to those who wants to import maize. If you have your own forex, you can import maize. So we need to understand that. Secondly, when you have dwindling foreign reserves and you have things that cannot be manufactured locally, which you are hell-bent you would always get from abroad, and you know there are things that you could do in-house. Now, why would you take something valuable to get something that you could actually make locally? You know, it is not only maize that has had restriction to forex in the country. The same thing has been done to rice. And then there's a case, you know, it's interesting. I understand how we all feel. I am also a poultry farmer. I have a poultry farm, and it's touched everyone. But may I remind everyone that it is not just maize whose price has increased this year. Sorghum was 65,000 naira last year around December. Now it's about 180,000 naira. Is that because of the use by poultry farmers? No. Now we must understand the dynamics of, you know, how food prices sometimes go up and down. What you realize most time is that the changing climate, the impact of COVID, you know, some hoarding tendencies of some of, you know, us Nigerians have created what you can call a perfect storm to drive prices up. And now what I think we should do, which is what we're trying to do, is to join forces and find a way to backward integrate and produce as much maize as we can. The other options, which of course, I'm sure a lot of people have been considering here, is what can we do as regards alternative sources of carbohydrate for the poultry feed. And a lot of work has been done in this regard. A major challenge in this country is that, there's a lot of research that has been done on these alternative sources of carbohydrate, which needs to be distilled into usable format for poultry farmers and feed millers to use. We've tried it with cassava. We've tried it with cassava peels. Even sorghum has been used. So, but it's like, import seems to be the easy way out. And because it is the easy way out, we just do it without thinking of how we can. And these are hard choices that we're all making. A lot of people, even within the banking sector, they are also poultry farmers. They're all being touched by this. But it is not the denial of access to Forex that has driven prices up to this level. Would normally leave that industry to a particular commodity that they think the prices are up. And please, one moment. Oh, I'm meeting. Yeah. Sorry, I needed to, like I said, I was in a meeting, I had to hurry out. Now, so what I feel is that the Feed Millers Association, the Poultry Association of Nigeria, the Maize Association of Nigeria, and other key players in this sector, we need to join forces and solve this problem. Even if people get their access to Forex, it still doesn't mean that would, solve this problem. And I also mentioned something yesterday. When we bring in maize from countries where we are not sure of the sources of their maize, some of this maize is genetically modified. Are we comfortable with using genetically modified organism, maize for our products? You may look so beautiful, physically, but what is the impact long-term on our children and on the, so CBN would be concerned with, the long-term thing, not just so we are comfortable with the things that we can produce locally. Look at what happened to rice. When the president, stopped importation of rice, we were all saying, oh, this is bad, but now the country is better for it. At the time that the COVID came, if we hadn't closed the border and had built some, capacity locally, where would we have been getting our rice? A lot of countries were stopping exports. And what assurance do we have that even when we say that we want to import, some countries will still not do that? So these are some of the hard conversations that we need to start having. But the CBN is committed to working with all stakeholders to make sure locally that we can produce enough maize and get it across to everyone that needs it. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Abiodun, for that. I'll go to Engineer Lateru now. You are a representative of the All Farmers Association of Nigeria, and as Mr. Abiodun had mentioned, this is not a problem that's affecting just maize, but it's affecting various other food crops. So what would you say are the views, your views and the views of your members on this policy, and how has it affected, or how do you expect it to affect farmers in the future? You're muted, sir. Kindly unmute yourself.
Good morning, Benisola, and good morning to everybody on board. I'm here in two capacities, representing the farmers, and when I say the farmers, embraces all, livestock and farmers. And I, myself, am a poultry farmer as a professional also. Now, talking about the challenges, I can tell you there is a wrong timing on the announcement of this policy. And the reason why it is wrong timing was that now, if you look at average livestock farmers, it's not only poultry we are dealing with here. We are dealing with poultry, we are dealing with those in the fish industry, we are dealing with sheep and goat, because all these are those that are even essential. Now, before we talk about industries that are using maize, what now happened was at the beginning of the year, before the onset of the coronavirus pandemic, maize was going for around 90,000 naira. Now, with the onset of the pandemic, though agriculture was allowed to be moved freely in the country, but the problem is the maize farmer didn't have access to the market to take their products to the market. So which means it is only those that warehouse maize that were releasing it in trickle form into the market. So that drives the price of maize to hit the sky. At this same time, the poultry on the livestock farmer, when I say livestock, cut across everyone that is producing animal protein. All of them, they didn't have market for their product. It is true that they can come into the farm and evacuate it, but they cannot open their shops to sell the products they collected from the market. So that created a terrible glut for those that are in livestock business. And what was the result? The result is, especially those in the poultry, they were burying eggs, and the eggs that were selling for 850 naira will go as low as 200 naira per crate. Now, as during this pandemic, the maize goes as high as 150, 160,000 naira per ton. And when the livestock farmers, when they were getting out of this crisis, and the price of maize was coming down, it's coming down to around 130, 135, and the livestock farmers were praying hallelujah that the relief is coming. All of a sudden, this announcement came that the ban of whatever motive the CBN have in making that announcement, it is wrong at that time. And what now happened was that all the merchants, the maize merchants, they lock up their warehouses. They started releasing maize in trickle. That drive the price of maize to hit the sky to where we are now. And what now happened was that it is true, CBN may have a good policy. They have good intention, but it was badly implemented. And I can tell you, even the way they said they did it, the way they said they tried to go about empowering the maize farmer, it takes time before this thing comes into the market. And you are asking livestock farmers to come and sign MOU agreements for what you are just planting. What happened between now? Because birds are eating every day. And maize constitute 55% of what livestock are eating on daily basis. And even if you are going to change to alternate, we know, but at least people supposed to be prepared. And this alternative, because they said you cannot starve your chicken or whatever your livestock is. You have to feed them on daily basis. So by the time you look at this, I can tell you the kind of a chain effect of what this has caused. What it has caused is, number one, you send a lot of people out of business. And number two, the value chain that are involved in the maize consumption, you've sent a lot of people to the early grave, because when they look at it, those that are trying to get out of the coronavirus pandemic, all of a sudden they were hit with this policy. Because that policy, assuming it wasn't announced at that time, I can tell you things wouldn't have been as bad as it is. If you make the announcement when we are onset of the maize, or when there is going to be glut in the maize, you make everybody prepare for it. We start looking for alternative, but it is not good. It's not.
All right, thank you, Engineer Latari. So I'd like to ask you another question. In 30 seconds or less, can you please tell us what this policy, the impact of this policy on maize farmers or the alternatives that you mentioned?
Yes, the impact of this policy, number one, is that the maize farmer, I can tell you, traditionally, any year we have high prices of maize like this, even without CBN intervention. All farmers, all agrarian farmers, they mobilize themselves into the commodity that is selling higher. So without CBN intervention, I can assure you there will have been glut of maize this year. But what is going to happen is that there is going to be scarcity. Watch it. There's going to be scarcity of soya this year. By the time we are getting to December, January, February, you will see that there will be no soya available, because all soya farmers, most of all these other farmers, all our seasonal farmers, they will all move into maize, and there will be abundant supply of maize, and there will be scarcity of soya. So, I mean, you can see that you are solving it now with their intervention. We see what happened yesterday with the discussion. So you are solving a problem to create another one.
All right, thank you very much, Engineer Lateral. So I'll go to Dr. Amole now. I know that you've done quite a bit of research, quite a lot of research on cassava peels as an alternative to as an alternative to maize in poultry feed. And one of the projects that the ILRI has done in collaboration with the Africa Development Bank is aimed at creating, improving or increasing productivity and profitability in the in poultry through the feed and all that other forms. So what exactly would you say about cassava peels as an alternative for maize? Is it a good enough alternative? Do you think that it's something that poultry farmers should look into at this time?
Yeah, thank you, Gbemi, and thank you to everyone on the panel. Before I go straight to your question, I think it's important for me to also say that we are all in this crisis, and hopefully we will come out of it. But let me just add to it that solving a problem to create another one has been the mode of operation in this country. We don't work as a system. We try to solve a particular problem, and at the same time, since we are not working as a system, I imagine that CBN has, of course, I'm sure they will have done that, but to what extent have they worked with other stakeholders before even bringing this out? Have we worked with the farmers? Have we worked with the input suppliers? There are so many things that is still along this way for us to solve, and I want us to just be proactive and find a way to solve it. Probably later I will still have opportunity to talk more into that. IRRI has been working very hard on making alternative feeds. Our concept is that every organism survives in its own habitat. And what makes you to survive in your habitat? There must be life in your habitat. There must be food. All right, so we believe that livestock located in different places and in different agroecological zones have what it takes to survive within its own ecological zone. When you import a particular species to a new environment, you should be sure to bring in the food along, or what that feed is going to survive with. All right, so if we have poultry and we have other livestock here in Nigeria, we need to look into what do we have to make them to survive, and one of it is maize, which we've been looking at. But the challenge we are having with maize is not only because there is CBN issue around it. The measure is, the main challenge is that there is always a competition between man and animals, particularly for a particular food. And we have come to, over the years, try to differentiate that we have food for human beings and we have feed for livestock. When feed becomes one, there will always be a competition. You will agree with me, Engineer Lateral, we can bear witness that out of 11.4 million of maize that we use in this country, probably 50 to 60% of it goes to livestock industry. Well, but originally for us here in Africa, maize is a staple food for human beings. So when we are now having about 60% going into livestock, there will always be competition. Now, so we look into alternatives. What are the alternatives that we can have to support livestock industry when the competition between livestock and man continue to increase? Over the years, we've been looking at cassava But let me tell you this morning, cassava itself has a lot of product for human being, even more than maize. Virtually in every culture in this country, they have 2 to 3 products from cassava. And you can be sure gari now is now an international staple food. It's everywhere. So let's look beyond cassava and look into the peels. Let me let you know that out of every 10 tons of cassava you harvest, 2.5, between 2 to 2.5 tons of that cassava is the peel, which is being wasted every year. In 2015, according to the reports, Nigeria produced about 15 million metric tons of cassava, which has been our benchmark over the year, 15 million metric tons. From that 15 million metric tons, about 4 million metric tons of it are the peels, which are being wasted. Now, if we look at 4 million metric tons and we convert it into livestock feed, you are sure that out of that 4 million, we will have about 1.2 to 2 million metric tons coming into livestock industry, which is going to reduce the burden on maize. I know this will create another challenge that, then people go into, people start going into cassava cultivation, which is beautiful. We have the power, we have the resources. Now, over the years, we have seen that cassava peel, if it's processed properly, and that could be done under 24 hours, can become a potential ingredient that can be used in all kinds of livestock, particularly in poultry. Now, if I have the time, I'll be telling you how this could be done. But we have been doing this in the last 5 years. We have, in fact, when it was part of the technology we showcased for AFDB under the tax, and it's been honed in this country in the last 2 years to promote the use of cassava peel. If we come to accept this, we will first be solving the problem of environmental pollution. You will agree with me that wherever you set up a cassava processing center, you will always have heaps of waste there. So when we solve this problem of environmental pollution, we also move that to solve the problem of, increase in prices of maize and challenges we're having with livestock. Now, to what extent have we used cassava peel to feed livestock? In fish, you can, in fishery and in aquaculture, you can completely remove maize and put cassava peel there. I know there is a myth around cyanide. Cyanide in cassava peel, it doesn't get dry on time. Processing it under 24 hours has dealt with all those issues. The issue of cyanide is not what we should be talking about now in this dispensation. Cyanide has been reduced to 0. Barely undetectable at all. Aflatoxin has been dealt with, and you can use this to replace maize at certain level. We have not, let me stress this, I know other people could have done that, but we have not completely come to a point to remove maize. We are still trying to work on that, and the result is not better. We are not saying you can do away with maize, particularly in poultry, but in aquaculture, yes, we have results. And we even have a particular feed miller called Premium Feed, who has been using cassava peel in the last 4 years, okay, to produce all kinds of floating feeds, in aquaculture. So you can remove maize completely and replace with cassava peel in aquaculture. In poultry, we have been able to use it in, poultry, we have different classes of animal. We have, grower feed, in starter feed, in layer feed. So far, you can remove maize up to about 15 to 35% of maize, then you replace it with cassava peel. But all of this, again, has to do with the prices of other ingredients. Do you understand? It has to do with the prices of other ingredients. Before this crisis of maize now, we have been able to use maize up to about, we've been able to replace maize to about 50–60%. But now that maize has increased, we also need to look for alternatives. And now people are using corn brown. But I know it's because corn brown has been stored over the years. Because if there is no maize, there is no corn brown. Okay? And like what Engineer Olacheru said, if we don't have soybean, to complement some of the deficiencies you will find in a cassava peel, we will still come to a point where we have to reduce the level of inclusion. I am saying you can push it as far as 50%. We have done that. As long as you have other ingredients within your confines at stable prices. But when the prices of those ingredients increases, you have to also reduce so that you can put back your meat. For now, we are using corn brown and maize at about 15–20%. And we're having fantastic results. So far, we've been able to cut down the cost of feed at least to about 10%. So if you are making a feed of 500,000 every week, and you're able to cut down 50,000 from it, I think that's not a joke. But this is still a research. So far, this is where we have gone. We are still doing more, and we are promoting it at every level. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Amala. You said quite a lot there about other alternatives that we have. And thank you to everyone that's dropping in their questions. Kindly drop them in the Q&A box as opposed to the chat box so we can answer them when we start responding to questions. So now I would go to the actual poultry farmers, starting with Mrs. Blessing Alawode. Earlier in the year, around like a month or two ago, you had actually in an article that the COVID-19 pandemic had already had an impact on poultry farmers like yourself. Prices of your output, eggs and chickens had really reduced. So just run us through a little breakdown of your journey from the beginning, from when you started selling about 1,000 birds to now that you have over 50,000 birds, and how this new policy might start to affect your business. You have quite a bit of experience in the business. So what do you expect to change as a result of this policy? Mrs. Blessing? I think
she's muted. Probably you'll mute her when you ask her to.
Okay, she's back. Mrs. Blessing, did you get my question? Okay.
Hello, I lost connection there.
Okay, so I'll just say it once more. So as a business owner, you've had quite a lot of experience in poultry farming, from when you started with about 1,000 birds to now that you have over 50,000 birds. So just run us through your journey so far and what you expect this policy to, what impact you expect it to have, or what do you expect to change in your business now that there is this issue with the restriction on forex for maize importation?
Thank you very much, Benny. And thank you, other panelists, and as many has been able to connect to this webinar this morning. I want to ask first, do I have the opportunity of being able to share a screen on this forum?
Yes, you should be able to.
Okay, while we sort that out, I will say that the poultry industry, and particularly for me, the year 2020 has been very, very turbulent, especially since the outbreak of the COVID. Like Engineer Olacheru said earlier, please let me know as soon as I have an opportunity to share the screen. because that may be able to pass my message better. Just before the lockdown, due to the COVID pandemic, maize sold for less than 100,000, 90,000. But in January, early February, it was at 85,000 naira. At this time, eggs sold for 840 farm gate price.
Now.
Oh, thank you so very much.
Yeah, there's a screen share button.
Okay, I'm still getting host disabled participant screen sharing. Okay. So at this time, depending on your level of efficiency, our contribution is at about 38, 40, some as high as 42%. And note that that is just contribution after feed costs. Then, suddenly, the crisis, which is a global crisis. At this time, the contribution for an average poultry farmer, including myself, dropped to almost about negative. Because while a bag of feed in March was at 3,035 naira, assume that at a five crates of egg to a bag of feed, that comes to, if you allow me to share the screen, I would have been able to do a better job there. The cost of egg was selling for below the cost of production. 3,050 naira divided by 5 gives us a little above 600 naira. Egg was selling for 400 naira, 500 naira, depending on who. The tougher farmers sold, the best sales was at about 700 naira. So if you look at the contribution, it was almost negative or at about a digit. When the lockdown was eased and we were heaving a sigh of relief, maize jumped, the price of maize started climbing. But at least we could match it with the price of egg, which had crawled up to about 800 naira, and demand was increasing. So that could give farmers the opportunity of upping their price a bit. Oh, good. Thank you. So, hello? Hello?
We can hear you, Mrs. Blessing.
Okay. Can you view the screen?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can view your screen.
Okay. So you see that in April, you see the price of egg had plunged seriously. The egg is the blue line. The maize is the red line, and you see the price of egg. The unit price, the egg price almost stable there. The contribution is the blue. The maize is the red. So you see the contribution of the farmer deepening seriously in April. And at the time we were about to heave a sigh of relief that the lockdown was easing, there was beginning to be demand of egg. That was in July. The GBM policy on the ban on importation was announced. And maize became almost a diamond. For every other sector, usually it is the producer is able to pass on his increase in cost of production to the end product. So why is the poultry, why am I not able to do this? I'm not able to do this because egg to an extent is a bit inelastic. Currently at the price of 900 to 950 naira to a crate of egg, which gives me a contribution of about 18%, going by today's price of about 3,750 naira for a bag of feed. Farmer, the egg buyers are already resisting that price. So what does this mean for me as a poultry farmer? My profit has been almost eroded because bear in mind that the contribution referred to at 18% is before every other cost. It's before my cost of capital. It's before my depreciation on my assets. What has happened? Personally, as a poultry farmer, when this policy was announced, I have a farm capacity of about 50,000. By the grace of God, I have a mill where I service myself only. But because of the price of maize, which was above the roof, also unavailable, I closed down my feed mill, attempting to lay off every worker on that unit. But after that, I agreed to work in the poultry pen, increasing my cost. Of course, the nation we are going through a very difficult time, and having someone who is just trying to manage a job, lose the job was a bit also a hard decision for me to take. So
seems like you lost. Okay.
Ideally, you should be thinking about replacement. But how do you replace stock when your contribution?
I think we lost her again. Most likely internet issues. Okay, Mrs. Besson, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so you have just 30 seconds to go.
So what I mean is that the poultry farmer is having a hard time because he's unable to replace his stock, managing at a contribution of just about 18%. 18% cannot guarantee continuity in business, because what determines a poultry farmer remaining in business is being able to replace her stock. And you don't replace stock at the point of disposal. That will mean a momentary cessation. And no, that is not a good practice. But at the current level, with maize at 175,000 per metric ton, finished feed at 3,750 naira or less if you are milling, the poultry farmer is unable to replace stock. If you cannot replace your stock, that means you'll be downsizing. And from the point of downsizing, it could mean even a cessation of business. And that will mean unemployment for the few hands that I engage or every other poultry farmer engages, and a loss of investment. And this does not hold anything good for us as an industry, for me as an investor in poultry sector. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Alawode, for that comprehensive breakdown. So she has mentioned that it's quite difficult in the poultry sector to transfer high cost of production to the actual end user. So speaking to Mr. Jesse now, you deal with, you crowdsource funds for investment in agriculture, in poultry farming also. So what would you say this would mean for investment yields and returns? Would it be the same as usual, or what changes do you expect as a result of this policy?
Hi, good morning, everyone. I don't know if you can hear me. Of course, duly observed to our seniors and colleague as well in the field of poultry industry. It's a huge blow, honestly, and hello, can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, so well, I would say this is a huge blow, and even though it's a welcome development for the country itself, but I would say, like our few colleagues, I don't want to repeat what a few people have said, but first of all, it's wrong, very wrong timing. And why I would say it's a wrong timing is that if you look at what has happened in the last 6 months, you cannot infuse that kind of pressure on the economy and also on people, because what happens is that this is transfer. Hello? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Sorry, network is. So for us on our side, yes, it will impact our profit margin automatically, and that actually affects how those are done. But I think I would like to bring to our notice a few things I feel this ban on FX for importation of maize brings, because there are two sides of the coin. There's the production side and there's the consumption side. I think everyone on this panel literally are talking about the consumption side of it. And yesterday, actually, I was on that I was on the webinar call, and I listened to a few discussions based on the production of maize and everything. I think for our side, on the consumption side, because we actually do more of the buying and the production of feed for livestock, there's little of much we can do because we actually, our hands are tied literally, because we actually are not the ones planting this maize. So on the production side, I think a lot of things, not even, I also don't think it's just the FX issue. A lot of issues like insecurity, seed quality, climate change. For instance, next year is going to be very hard in the livestock industry, because for instance, now in this part of which is supposed to be wet season farming, there has not been any rain. So, and we really don't have proper irrigation systems. So if you look at the entire system, it's actually being packaged to fail, and which I feel the CBN should have thought it through, engaging everybody, engaging all the stakeholders, and say, okay, we want this to happen, but how can we systematically infuse this so that the impact is not as huge as we're doing it currently? So we're saying, okay, fine. What research has been gone into, R&D has gone into this system to find alternative feeds? We're talking about alternative feeds right now. It's not the right time to do this. It's not the right time to say we should think of alternatives now. That should have been done probably by an R&D system for a while, to actually just infuse probably in the next coming 3, 4, 5 years, not just shut down. Because my point is, CBN is actually saying that this was done to protect, 1, local production, 2, to stimulate rapid economic recovery, 3, to safeguard rural livelihoods, and 4, to increase job creation. Now, if you look at what they have mentioned, it's actually done the reverse. Because right now, people will lose jobs. They will lose jobs. Rural livelihoods will drop. Right now, it might not rapidly improve the economy as at now. Yes, people might push into local production, but interim. So we are saying, okay, fine, we want the company to grow. We want to do this, and also notice that it's not only the poultry industry that uses maize. There are other factors that there are other industries that use maize. For instance, we have a company that actually does what you call it, conflict and the NASCOs and the rest, they all make use of maize. So it's not just only the poultry sector. So what you're now saying is that those who are using FX to bring in maize into the country, we're not going to give you anymore. That puts pressure on the local production. It puts a lot of pressure. So those who have more buying power can actually be able to dictate the prices.
I think we lost him again. The internet is quite something wrong today. Are you back with us? Okay.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Thank you back. Yes. So you have just 30 seconds to go, and I'm hoping that you just touch a bit on the impact on investment now. So would investors now be a bit averse to investing in poultry? And you as an investor and as a crowd fund stuffer, what would you expect to happen? In just 30 seconds, please.
So I think what will happen is we'll have to go back to our books and look at it properly and see, okay, where can we bridge the gap? So, okay, fine. How can we make sure that the adverse effect doesn't hamper too much on the investor and also on the company? It has to be a win situation for both parties for us to sit down and say, okay, fine, this is what has happened, this is where we are, this is what we are making. Can we come to a compromise, hoping that this will actually subside in the coming months and the coming years? But we have to sit back and look through the drawing board properly. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Jesse. So I'll go back to Mr. Abiodun now. Speaking of bridging the gap, Jesse has just mentioned that we need to go back and think through what we have done and how we can find solutions. I know that the central bank, you mentioned they've undergone some a poultry infrastructure gap analysis where they try to find out what in all the states in Nigeria, where are the poultry feed millers, where are the poultry farmers, what gaps exist in the states and how can we plug in these gaps? So can you just speak to what solutions, based on this analysis, what solutions is the CBN looking to provide to mitigate the impact on the poultry industry? In a minute, please.
Thank you. Look, I'll be honest with everyone. There are no hard and fast rules to economic development. You see, the truth of the matter is, if you check those 41 items not valid for forest, number 7 of them actually also specify that meat and processed meat should not be imported this country. It also says that chicken, turkey products should not be imported into this country, except hatchable eggs. Now, it can be protecting, that is protecting actually the poultry industry from this foreign import. Even up till now, you still see a lot of smuggling of this frozen chicken coming into this country. So you see, what's good for the the goose is good for the gander. We can't be protecting the poultry industry, your own end product, and you now say the maize farmers should not be subject to the vagaries of international price mechanism. This, this restriction has been like 3 years now. That should give us enough time to have looked at our processes. We are all in businesses as private individuals. The core mandate of the CBN, among others, is to safeguard the international value of the Naira. If you see that your forex is dwindling and there are things that you know you cannot produce in-house, and then you are spending the same money to import things that we can grow locally, and then you have over 30 million farmers spread across the country in arable farming. Let us be honest with ourselves. Now you say, okay, some people are saying it's the wrong timing. When is the best time? This should be like the same time they were banning access to forex for the same processed meat. That's when we should have done the same thing for maize farming. So let's be honest. What we need to do is to close ranks, come together, and find a way out. Look, I am a poultry farmer, and I keep saying this all over the place. In fact, I believe in international trade, but the truth of the matter is, how free and fair is international trade? And all the countries telling us to go into international trade and allow importation from the countries that are the best producers, are they doing the same thing? Food sovereignty is key. You cannot leave the source, the power to produce your food that your people eat in the hands of strangers? It's not possible. I want to be honest here. I know everybody is feeling bad. We are all hurt by this. A lot of people, you probably would know that the only thing that a public servant can do is agriculture. We have people, even within the banks, within the CBN, that are also poultry producers. They are all feeling the brunt of this policy. But we need to do what is best for the country. Let me tell you something. There's an access, there is information that is available to me that you may not be aware of. There's information available to top management of CBN that you cannot see. We can see the amount of forex that we are giving out to maize. We can see how much maize is supposedly being imported into this country. And then we can see that this maize being imported, it's not enough to have caused this distortion. There are people holding this maize, waiting, thinking that there will be a time that they'll be able to sell at a higher price. Is that not true? So I'm saying all these laudable efforts that the bank, the CBN, under the direction of the president has brought out. Why don't we try and find a way to access these funds? We say, okay, fine, we've banned processed chicken, we've banned importation of eggs. All right, this means that if we're able to cut down our cost, find institutional buyers for some of these products, we should be able to sell. I was speaking about this the last time. I said egg powder is being imported into this country to the tune of $1 billion. And these are institutional buyers. Cadbury, Nestle, they all use egg powder. There's only egg powder, producer in this country is located somewhere in Ijebu, and she does just 2,500 eggs per day. If poultry producers are able to process their eggs into powder, number one, you'll be able to sell to institutional buyers. Number two, you will not be subject to the vagaries of the fact that, okay, if you don't sell your eggs right now, it's going to get spoiled. What happened during the pandemic, like you said, is people were actually burying their eggs. That wasn't because of the forex. That was what we call a force majeure. It happened. Nobody could control it. A lot of countries were stopping exportation to other countries because everybody was trying to close ranks. So we need to wait for another pandemic to happen before we build our local capabilities. Fine. So that's what we're saying. Now, back to what I was going to talk about, so now, when we did this gap analysis, because when I took up this role as the team lead poultry working group, the first thing I thought was, I didn't want to do anything that is short-term in nature. I wanted to understand the problem. I wanted to do an analysis. So, in every CBN branch, there's a development finance office, which is like our desk officers in the branches. So we said, okay, you know what? We have some data from the internet, but let's do some ground truthing. Go out, check, ask questions from Poultry Association of Nigeria, talk to the Smallholders Poultry Forum, talk to the Nigerian Society of Animal Scientists. Where are the poultry producers? How much of their capacity is actually being utilized? I'll give you an example. In Lagos, for instance, out of over 2 million pen house capacity, only about 50% is being utilized. That means you have about 1 million capacity left unused. So instead of now putting money to new people to start building another infrastructure, why don't we resuscitate these ones, fund people to use these facilities? Even if the owner of the facility is not interested in using it, why not lease? That's one. I now said, okay, fine. I also see this every time, just like a lot of the poultry farmers have said. If you are rearing broilers, for instance, at the point your broiler is ready for the market, every cost you spend on feed at that point in time is a waste. When your broiler is ready, maybe 6 weeks or 7 weeks, depending, and maybe it's the right age, every feed you give it at that time is a waste. But then, how about if you are not able to sell at that point in time? So then we start saying, okay, where are the processing plants in each state? Are the capacities enough for the people who are growing the birds? Who are they selling to? You can't rely on the open market. The biologist can come to your farm and say, okay, today I'm not going to pay you right now. You have to wait. But because you have no choice, you'll be forced to sell to them. And so we started looking at this. So we now said, okay, how about another opportunity for poultry farmers? If we diversify the income we can get from an average poultry farm, not now focusing strictly on the birds, you realize that the manure that you're getting from your farm with the right equipment can give you biogas, it can also give you, organic manure. So we'll start thinking of all these things that, okay, maybe you have an agglomeration of poultry farmers in a location. You come to us, give us a good business plan. We fund these small scale, technological innovations. And then you also start producing gas, which can even be used back on the farm, which means all the cost of, paying for power is off. And then you're now getting manure, which you now start selling even to arable farmers. And then we now said, okay, let's now talk to institutions. The universities, for instance, we always believe our universities should do more in research development, especially that, okay, I studied animal science from the Obafemi Awolowo University. In 5 years when I was leaving the university, the practical things I should have learned, I didn't learn. I didn't start to learn how to, vaccinate chicken and do a lot of things until I started working with UAC farms somewhere in Lanlate. So we need our young people coming even out of agric to have these practical skills. So we say universities, come, take some money, set up, look at what is missing in the state that you are, let us fund you, and then you can now be like maybe outgrower scheme for your students, outgrower scheme for your rural communities. And then that way we have an end-to-end situation. Set up cold transport chains. How are chickens, how are chickens transported in this country? When you see chickens being transported, you pity them. It shouldn't be like that. So we want to do an end-to-end thing, partner with the right people, and make sure this industry actually survives. There are no short-term thinking that can help us, and there are no quick and fast with this. There's really no silver bullets to these problems unless we collaborate, we talk together, and we fashion out ways. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Abiodun. Just in 10 seconds, please. What are there solutions that the CBN has put in place today that Mrs. Blessing as a poultry farmer can tap into, or that Dr. Amole as a research person can provide technical support to today? What solutions are in place today?
Okay, so let me put it like this. You see, every public institution in this country has specific mandates. And every, should I say, farmers group or association also has specific mandates. You see, we are bound by rules. Development finance is not a core function of central banks across the world. Our core mandate is always price stability and monetary stability. But now we realize in countries like Nigeria, we are a lower, I think they call us lower middle income country. You find out, like I was telling you yesterday, that the share of food in the food basket of the average family is really, really very high as 69% in Nigeria. So now what that means is that if the prices of food is not stable, we cannot have monetary stability. And that is the justification for CBN's incursion into development finance. So we're now saying, okay, because what we have as a tool is, public fund, which belongs to all of us. Let's find a way to give concessional finance to those people that we are sure are actually in the agricultural value chain, such that, okay, if when we are sure, the fact that you're getting your interest at maybe less than 10%, when compared to the market's interest rate of like 25%, 26%, means we are already giving you an edge as a farmer. You understand? Compared to somebody who is in buying and selling, who is getting his rate at maybe 26%. So that's what we do. And to be honest, we've got over 15 programs for different aspects of the agricultural value chains. We've got the one for the smallholder farmers. We've got one for the large-scale farmers like Commercial Agri Credit Scheme. We've got this one called AGSMIS, the Agri Small and Medium Enterprise Investment Scheme, which, to be honest, does not even only focus on agric, focuses on agribusiness. So if, for instance, you want to set up a processing center, you can do it. You want to set up something to do with processing of in a cold chain transport, you can do it. So it's not just agricultural, but it's the agribusiness value chain. And then we also have the commercial agri credit, which is for the very large farms. You can take up to like 2 billion. But what we find out is, you see, the issue of asset building, it's a major problem with most of our farmers. You see, we understand. And that is why we now start what you call the collateral registry, where you can use what they call movable assets. So we come to your farm, you have cattle, then they can value your cattle and you can use your cattle as collateral. we come to your farm, we see that you have, crops that is, like cocoa trees, palm oil trees. Yeah. And then we value that. And then you can also use that as an asset, because we know that there's something dysfunctional. If you're asking a farmer to give you a house in Ikoyi while he's living somewhere in Ijebu, there's a disconnect, because that means that farmer is actually not a true farmer. So we have all those schemes. And then under the ACMIS, for instance, we are even telling you that you don't even need to bring a collateral. If you want to buy a machine or a piece of equipment, that equipment itself will stand as your collateral. The only thing we now tell you to do is make sure that you do comprehensive insurance on that. We funded farmers to buy tractors. We funded them to buy, and then even for agric, we specifically requested that they allow those in the poultry sector to use their pen, cages, and day old chicks or whatever animals they are rearing as collateral. So, but then this thing I really need to say, you see, when issues like this happen, there's a power that every association has. It's the power of dialogue. You see, when we pull all our points together and you write to the CBN, this is a listening organization. If you say this is what we think and this is what we think, we can always see. I mean, policies are made for people, not people for policies. Policies can be rejigged, it can be rethought, it can be we can re-strategize over it. So I just feel that there's a lot we need to do together, and I'd really be interested in continuing this conversation with Dr. Amole. Yeah, because I remember when I was still in Abeokuta, we had this program with the university in UK where they actually practicalized the feeding of cassava pellets to broilers. And they did the way we do practical experiment in animal science, and after the whole thing, they weighed them and were able to see that there was no significant difference. And then they went ahead to kill them, to butcher the chicken and taste it to know if there's an impact on the quality of the meat. I remember what I said, just like Uncle Terry D. I know him very well. He doesn't know me again. Uncle Terry D said, look, we have to start adapting. The same thing we are speaking about protein. And I remember saying this, alternative protein, the use of insect protein, we have to start having that conversation. Maize is a flex crop, like Doctor said. We eat a lot of maize in this country, a lot of maize. Also remember, 30% of the maize being produced is wasted because of lack of preservation and the inability of farmers to maybe even access the market at the right time. If you travel along Lagos Expressway up to Osogbo, up to Ilorin, at the time they are harvesting the maize, you see the maize fresh on the road. By the time you're coming back, ask those women where they said they didn't sell it, that means they've taken it back into the house. What is going to happen at the end of the day, because most of them don't have proper storage, is that it's going to either be given to chickens like that, which is a problem because it's not well dried, or it's going to be infected with mold because they can't store it. So once they are not able to sell at that point in time, we have a big problem. So I'm also thinking of how do we ensure that we have enough processing centers in these rural villages to be able to process this maize from the raw form to that usable form that poultry farmers actually need. You understand? And then how about the sustainable intensification of our production systems? Right now, we're doing 4 tons per hectare. I'm not even sure we're doing that across the country. Brazil is doing like 12 tons, I think. We need to find a way to ramp up. And just like I just said something that I really liked. What are we doing about climate change as an institution? As it's happening. It hasn't rained for the past 60 days in the Southwest, but NIMET is telling us it's going to rain till December. So that means by the time the rain comes, it's going to be serious. Now, there will going to be much more water than required. What are we doing to harvest this water so that later farmers can use it? And when I was living in Australia, they had a price for water. They had a water market. So if you need water, you go and pay for water. But here, water is being wasted. That is everything that we do in agriculture in this country depends on water. The whole issue about land grabs, green grabs, it's all about water. Bimisola, I'm sorry. I think you're already giving me a sign that I should stop.
Yes, thank you so much for that. Thank you for that insightful session. I'll go back to Mr. Onalo now. Please tell us. So we've spoken a lot about different alternatives, cassava, corn bran, which is also still corn. There's wheat, there's millet, different sorghum and different other alternatives. What do you think would be the disposition of your members, of poultry farmers, to these alternatives? Are they ready to take up these alternatives? What obstructions would prevent them from taking these alternatives? Mr. Akwa, sorry, you're muted, so we can't hear you. Okay, we can hear you now. Mr. Akwa, oh, you're muted again. No. Hello, Mr. Akwa, we should be able to hear you now. Yes, we can, but it's breaking a bit, but we can hear you. Oh no, we cannot hear you. Okay, while we wait for Dr. Akwa, I'll quickly move on to Engineer Latero. We've mentioned a bit about how some farmers, some maize farmers especially, have taken this opportunity to hoard products. You mentioned that when farmers switch over to maize as opposed to other products, there will be scarcity. So what is the association doing to prevent hoarding at this time and to prevent such scarcity from happening in the coming farming season?
Thank you. I will talk on the maize and the cassava field, which Dr. Amalia have mentioned. You see, the hoarding issue is a very serious challenge. The thing is, you have some people, some group of people that is their main line of business. During the time of maize harvesting, their own is to mop up everything they can mop up and lock it up in the warehouse, waiting for the time the price will hit the sky. And during the time that the scarcity start coming in, because they target it around February, March, when the harvesting must have done, and you will see them now using their mafia network to start controlling the price. So, and I mean, they only capitalize on the announcement the CBN made to lock up their warehouses, waiting for the price to hit 200,000 naira per ton before they start releasing it in trickle. Now, what is the way forward? Are we going to continue like this? No. Number one, because it would have been good when the policymaker, if they involve everybody in the system before the policy was announced. Because all over the world, what is being done and the normal practice is that it's unfortunately we don't have data in this country. What they do all over the country is when you have a kind of a scarcity, you look at what kind of a scarcity you have, what is the volume, you open the window, you identify those that will bring those material in, they bring it in, and it is controlled. So with that one, it is not a kind of opening all the border and say Dick and Harry can bring anything in. One. Two, now we are already in this challenge. The problem is here with us because definitely there's going to be a problem of soya next year, whether we like it or not. So now on the issue of energy, which is maize, which is something like maize we are using, we thank God there is already a solution, a kind of ready-made solution, which is the cassava peel, and which Dr. Amale and his team are working on, and it is already working. Because with that one, conveniently, they've tested it on broiler, they've used it to rear broiler from day old to even culling, and they get fantastic results. And they've succeeded in replacing cassava peel with maize, up to 40% of maize inclusion, conveniently without even affecting the shell life of an egg, which was the main concern of an average poultry farmer using cassava. So, but there are some challenges those that are making this cassava mash are facing, which need to be addressed. And the problem they are having is getting proper dryer, mechanical dryer, because it is too expensive. Right now, what they are doing is they are using manual hand kind of a drying, just like the way they prepare gari, using a kind of a manual mode in drying it. And when you look at the volume of what we are looking at in the poultry industry or livestock industry, I can tell you it is a big challenge on them. But it's good our colleagues and our brother from CBN says it's easier for us to access funds. I wish it is that easy, because I know I was with Dr. Amale in his office, and we are talking about it. He himself is facing challenges. I mean, on this dryer, they are looking at the cost, and they are looking at how to mitigate it, where to run to, how to source fund to get the dryer in. I'm very happy our brother from CBN will be hearing this. So if these challenges, and I know it's only if Dr. Amale and his team with their big organization can be having this kind of a challenge, you can now imagine those that they have trained that want to jump into this line of business and make this thing readily available for livestock user. Our people in the sheep and goat, they've tried this cassava peel, cassava mash, and they found out that even the sheep and goat, they prefer it better than using maize-oriented kind of a feed. So these are alternatives that are available, but there are still challenges they are facing, which need to be properly addressed. And that is why if there is a situation where the policymaker involve all the people involved in the value chain system and try to bring every one of us together and see how we can holistically address the issue. And from there, we know there are checks and balances. It is good the CBN is having all these policies, how many people are able to access it, and then what are the bottlenecks to access this fund. And I can tell you it is easy, the way our brother is saying it, but it is easier than done. But we will have been happy. By the time they are making this ban on this maize, I can tell you, if for any reason they have all the stakeholders involved in the whole process, number one, the issue of this maize, when we are talking, when the panelists were talking yesterday on the amount of seed that is available in the country and the volume of acreage that CBN says they are funded for maize planting, I can tell you there is a gap that is even more than 50%. So, which means the farmers that are planting maize, what is it they use? That means they use ordinary grain. And what are they expecting? If a farmer that is expecting, for EOP, for the estimated cost of production for maize, if you are going to do everything the way you're supposed to do it, you can see that it's going to cost them about 300,000 naira per hectare. So if an average maize farmer is costing him or her 300, minimum of 300, that is, if you are doing the thing that's supposed to be done the way it's supposed to be done, that is three time tractor, applying the proper fertilizer, which is NPK 1515, and urea. Then you apply all the chemicals you're supposed to apply, and you use planter to do the planting. I can tell you your cost cannot, this was done before the price of fertilizer moves from 6,000 to around 12 or 13,000 naira now. So by the time you put those one in, to an average maize farmer, the cost to produce on an hectare of land is more than 300,000. And if they now unfortunately use the wrong seed to do this planting, That means what they are going to get out of an hectare may not even be up to 2 tons. So which means from the onset, the maize farmer is already at loss. If he's selling his own maize at 100,000 naira or anything lower, or even you can do your calculation and you see. Whereas our fellow farmers in other parts of the world, they are getting 10 tons, 12 tons on the same parcel of land. So assuming to say we all come together, we see how we can address this problem, improve on the yield per acreage, and then that will put a less pressure on a maize farmer to start increasing the price. Because if it's costing a maize farmer about 300 or 350,000 naira to do the proper thing the way it's supposed to be done and get about 10 tons on an hectare. If he's selling it at 60,000 naira per ton, he will not feel cheated and he will feel fulfilled. But a situation where a farmer, it is good, the CBN provide the money, but they have to pay back. But if they are going to pay back, that means they must make profit. But when you give them money and they cannot even break even, so you call this farmer that they are indebted to you. But was the right thing done before you set these people out? So, and that is why the problem is not, you look at it, is beyond what we are looking at. But I believe if everybody is on board and if all the challenges are properly articulated, I believe the sky is the limit. But right now, as we are talking now, to mitigate this challenge, I'm going to encourage our poultry and our livestock farmer to start including cassava mash on their feed formulation. That is what the big feed industries are using to reduce their prices and mitigate their costs. So you may be wondering, how are they doing it with the maize going as high as 200,000 naira per ton, and the little increase you are having on your feed that you are buying? So it is not that they are making magic. The only magic they are doing is they are using this cassava cassava mash. But by the time you look at it, the average cost of a cassava mash per ton is less than 50,000 naira. You compare that with what what the maize farmers are doing to you. An average poultry farmer, my advice to them is start inclusion of cassava peel in your feed, and that will reduce the pressure on maize. And that will make everybody, those that are ordering the maize, to realize that it's not in their own interest to continue in that line of business. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Engineer Latter. So I'll go back to Mr. Akpa. So now that we've been told that poultry farmers should incorporate cassava peels in their feed formula, what do you think would be the disposition of your members to this new suggestion?
Yeah, thank you, Gwemisola. Sorry for the network problem that I could not talk earlier. I want to put one thing in proper perspective. No poultry farmer wants to import maize. No poultry farmer wants to import anything except when necessary. So what am I trying to say? The issue of the maize importation came out because of the cost of maize and the near scarcity of maize. And as an association, we decided to write to the Minister of Agriculture and then at the same time to the President of the Republic of Nigeria that, look, the poultry industry, the gain so far recorded in the last 15 years will be eroded if there's no direct intervention in providing maize to buffer the activities of the poultry industry. We understood that there was no maize in the strategic grain reserve. Now, we now say between June and December, just 6 months, we needed an ample approval for us to bring in our 1 million metric ton maize. By the time we finish using this maize, then the new maize would have come out. The hurdle of importation, the hurdle of clearing, the hurdle of all the forests, no farmer wants to be involved in it. Now, you cannot imagine a situation whereby the price of maize would jump from 9,000 to 170,000 in the Southwest. Then what is going to be the gain of the farmer? Virtually all the farmers were producing loss. So we can that allow us an importation of
around 1 million metric tons, which was the poultry needs in the 6 months. That is the basis. And then we decided as an association to copy the Central Bank of Nigeria, the copy of the letters to the president. My good brother Abiodun said that there was no ban on the importation. There is a letter that I have here from the Trade and Exchange Department, dated 13th of July, that said maize is banned. And as a result, maize has been placed among the 41 items that were not supposed to have forex. But he said maize was not banned. Maize is banned. The policy, the circular is clear. Now, in policy, there is no grandstanding in policy. In policy, you need to do stakeholders engagement. And that is why we decided to write the president, copy 9 agencies of government, including the Central Bank of Nigeria. And between the period we send the letter to Mr. President and when we send copy to the governor of the Central Bank, when the policy of unilaterally ban the image to cause he invited us stakeholders and we told him the gap. And he actually felt with it. Look, the rest of the industry, the economy of this country, and they cannot afford. If now says the reasons you are taking, the reasons why you are banning or putting maize on the import provision list is to increase rapid economic recovery, increase jobs, between 5 million direct employment. Now, just of a sudden, we start fighting stakeholders. What's your problem? And how is now within the jobs you want to say that we are bringing backward. Okay, there's a difference between sitting and taking, then people are on the price of full support in complaining or
we're struggling to hear you, Dr. Akwa. I think the internet
we're having a problem of we're having a problem of the is with fiscal policy department. Now, the moment the policy comes out, it is within the government. It's not that TBN will now say,
can you hear us?
It's what they have.
Struggling to hear you. I think the internet has an issue, so we can't make out what you're saying. Oh, I think it's better now, but you have a few seconds to go.
Better. Okay, but I mean, you know,
we can't. We're still struggling to hear you.
It's unfortunate. I don't know the best I can do. I'm using sense of network to make sure that this network improves, but I don't know. I don't know.
All right. Let's quickly. Thank you, Doc. Thank you, Mr. Akwa. Thank you for that. We struggled to hear you towards the end, but for most of it, we could hear what you said. And thank you for that insightful contribution into what the association is already doing to improve the situation. So I'll just go right into the question and answer session. If you haven't written your questions in the Q&A box, kindly do so that we can answer your questions. Dr. Omole, someone here is asking, Folusho Akonji is asking, 15 to 35% replacement of maize by cassava peel sounds interesting. But will you mind to share the profile of cassava peel? Cassava peel, I mean the nutrient profile of cassava peel in just 1 minute, Dr. Omole.
I think I have an external. Well, thank you so much, Folusha, and that's very lovely. I know your question is coming from a previous understanding we all have about cassava, that there is nothing in cassava. I let you even know that even the little protein in cassava is resides in the peels and not even in the, and like I did said, we turn out a junk of peels in this country. Nigeria is the largest producer of cassava all over the world. Invariably, we are the largest producer of the waste all over the world. So we should think very deep into that and use that to solve our problem. Now, the profile of cassava peel, after the process, you can, let me talk about the moisture content, which is very important to livestock farmer. It's between 10 to 12%, and that makes it to have a shelf life of about 6 months. That means in 6 months, you still have your peels the peel mash intact. In terms of protein, yes, protein, cassava peel is not a protein source. So it's between 3 to 4. But in terms of energy, you can have about 2,900 to 3,000 kilocalorie of energy. What do you have in maize? You have 3,300. So you have virtually 70 to 80% of the energy that you have in maize. Yes, in terms of fiber, which is the crude fiber, you have less than 8% of that fiber. This is a processed cassava peel, which I have shared the link, on the chart area. So if you look at the link, you can find out how this cassava peel is just being processed. The other thing you will talk about is the methionine. Yes, you have some amino acid that are absent in cassava peel. But even in maize, when you use full maize in your poultry diet, you had about 0.21 thereabout, depending on the classes of animal you are compounding feed for. So instead of where you are using 0.2 of methionine, if you are using maize, now you are using 0.24. So about 0.04 addition of methionine. I can share several other analysis with you if you can put that on the chart. But come to think of it again, there's a company in the Netherlands called Single Sparks in the Netherlands who came to Nigeria in the last 3 years to identify that there is a potential in the cassava peel. So they took samples to Nutrico. Nutrico lab is the first, is a leading lab in animal nutrition all over the world. And they did this analysis and they discovered that there's a great potential in cassava peel. So they have developed a app called Feed Calculator, and cassava peel has been included as an ingredient, that you can just select available ingredients and add, depending on the feed formulation, the classes of birds or animals you are compounding feed for, okay? Then you have your maize, you have other ingredients available, and a portion of cassava peel. So by now, what we are talking about is a level of replacement of maize is achievable without compromising the product in terms of egg, the taste of your birds, in terms of broilers. And let me tell you, people are already using it. The challenge I have is that drying, like Engineer Lateru said, drying to get the volume that we need for the poultry farmers in Nigeria is still a challenge. So, but the drying is not actually the challenge, it's the cost of a flash dryer. But this is the same flash dryer that we use in producing high quality cassava flour, but quite expensive. So we're also looking at a model whereby we have an aggregate of processor, and they bring it to a person who has a flash dryer and can flash dry and can make it available in the large volume that is needed. We have come to this point, and like some of the speakers have said, either there is a reversal in the policy or not. Can we look inward and see What do we have? You know, I started my statement by saying every organism survives and thrives well in its own habitat. Poultry is here in Nigeria. What do we have here in Nigeria to survive? That's what we should look at. With all the challenges we have with maize ban, we have a way of running around it. Like Mr. Abiodun said, which I know that's the approach we do in Nigeria. When there is a problem, we fight it, okay? And we find solution to it. If this is one, I think it's also an opportunity for us to come to a point whereby we solve the problem of maize completely, either by increasing our production or by bringing in all the input that is necessary, or by looking for alternatives, okay, which are all around us, particularly when we talk about cassava pea, which is a waste. So I know I've answered beyond your question, but I am sure that while we continue in the fight, let's look inward and see what do we have as an advantage. We produce the largest cassava all over the world. So what are we doing to that? All the advanced countries today, nobody depends on any kind of importation of whatsoever. If you are going to move forward in this country, then we must look inward and see what do we have comparative advantage, okay? And then we build up synergy around all the actors. That is key in moving forward. All the actors come together and we find a way forward. And Nigeria will be great at it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Amale, for that. Don't forget to send your questions to the Q&A box, not the chat box, so that we can answer them. So I have a question here. It says, okay, I have a few questions here. Was there, I think this is for Mr. Abiodun, there are quite a number of questions for Mr. Abiodun. I hope he's still with us. First one, was there any form of preparation towards the decision made by the CBN, and were all the stakeholders consulted when this decision was made? Mr. Abiodun had mentioned that the decision isn't cast in stone yet, so there's still conversations that would be ongoing. So another person mentioned that what has the CBN done to ensure that the price is still within reach while discouraging imports? Because Mr. Abiodun mentioned that farmers big sellers have monopolistic tendencies. So Mr. Abiodun, please tell us what the CBN is doing to maintain prices at a certain level. Is Mr. Abiodun with us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. As I said earlier, there are various interventions to mitigate some of these challenges. And I also said that privately, when the DG was speaking, not valid for Forex. That is not valid for Forex that is being given by CBN. Doesn't mean when you have your own Forex, you cannot import maize. So we need to get that distinction. Now, if you want to import maize and you have your own Forex, you can do so. That's one. Now, as the maize champion told you yesterday, they have cultivated quite a large number of hectares of maize. And then I think there's also plans to ensure that there is a release of grains from the strategic grain reserve, and then efforts are being made to ensure that those people who are ordering this maize release it to the people. But like I said, what is happening to the prices of maize is not something that can be completely attributed to the Forex lack restriction on Forex access. No one is saying that one cannot have access to Forex for sorghum, but the prices of sorghum have gone up. Prices of cassava too has gone up. So I think we need to understand this distinction. This is not something that affects just maize alone. Yes. What's the other question? Yeah.
There was a question about if stakeholders. I think you already mentioned that in your.
Okay, so I think I need to keep saying this over and over again. When you have a strategic mandate that is clearly stated, and then you see that there are occurrences that will make that mandate difficult to achieve, you need to act fast. When the house is on fire, you don't do a stakeholders engagement to put out the fire. This is a problem that needs to be solved. But like I said, just like the DG said, they have written, I think he said they have written to CBN. And I'm sure, like I said before, with proper collaboration and engagement, a lot of positive outcomes can be achieved. And I really believe that is already being thought through.
All right.
Thank
you, Mr. Abiodun. So there's another question here. Where can one get this comparative cheaper feed with substitute cassava and insect protein? So I think this is thrown out to the whole group. So where can poultry farmers access these cheaper feeds? If our poultry farmers, Mrs. Blessing and Jesse, have come across this cheaper feeds, where can we get it, and what has been your experience with it so far? Mrs. Blessing, is she still with us?
Hello.
Okay, Jesse. Okay, anyone?
Hello.
Yes, Mrs. Blessing, have you accessed these cheaper feeds, the ones used with cassava peels or insect protein or?
I have not, but I have heard about the cassava grape, but because I had to use it alongside maize, at the time that maize was very unavailable, I had to shut down for a while and depended on finished feed. So personally, as a farm, I've not used cassava grape. I really do not know where it's available. I hope that Dr. Tunde Amole will avail us of all information we need, also to be able to have it beyond Oyo and environment.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Blessing. Engineer Latoro, looks like you have
Yes. Dr. Amale is in the driving seat. I know they've trained a lot of potential producer of this cassava grit, and they have a kind of a WhatsApp chat group of all their members. And I believe he will be in a position to avail the livestock. I'm not saying poultry farmer alone now, because I can tell you, like I said earlier on, those in the sheep and goats, they've tried this cassava peel processed by them, and they love it. And I can tell you they are ready to go 100% because they find out that their sheep and goat, they love this product better than traditional maize. And so with us having Dr. Amale with us, I believe we should be able to get all the contacts. And my appealing to those that are processing the cassava peel, because right now it is like a trash. Right now the price is reasonable, but I can tell you by the time poultry and livestock industry start asking for this now, the price will hit the sky. Not like what happened to wheat over. I hope Dr. Amale will help us address his team so that they are reasonable in their pricing and they don't send farmers, because we want this to be a kind of a continuous process. Whether there is a crash in the price of maize, or no matter how crash the price of maize is, because once there is a crash in price of maize, if any, the same thing will happen to cassava. So, and right now, cassava peel costs nothing because you are like helping those that are involved in gari processing to take care of their waste. So please and please help us appeal to the team that are involved in preparing this cassava mash, that when the livestock farmer shifted their attention to buying from them, they will not turn it to gold, because that will automatically switch off the livestock farmer from using it, and they will go back to the tradition. That has been the practice before. They've been using the cassava powder, even when the cassava powder was not as acceptable as it was, as a substitute during this kind of crisis. But they find out that somewhere along the line, the middlemen came into the middle and they start manipulating the price. And immediately the price of maize come to a reasonable level, the livestock farmer, they switch off using cassava. So this time around, we appeal for sustainable usage, and we appeal that we want to make sure that as soon as the livestock farmers shifted into the cassava peel usage as a source of feed, please and please, the people out there should not take undue advantage of the situation and start doubling the price to turn off the livestock farmer. But it is a viable alternative now, and we should all explore it as much as possible. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Engineer Latero. I have another question here from Bala Aliu. Can rice husk serve as a viable alternative in poultry to maize in poultry feed?
Can I come in?
Yes, sir.
The nutritional value of rice husk is not even up to the standard of wheat over.
Yes.
And the kind of anti-nutritional effect that is in the rice husk is worse than what you have in wheat over or any other thing. If you, for any reason, want to use rice husk, you should limit it. It should just be a limited quantity. Otherwise, it will affect your production and your animal husbandry performances. But that kind of limitation, the one we have in the cassava grid, is the one that have been elaborated. But we know, apart from the cyanide, which have to be taken care of by time of during the time of processing, because that is one thing we need to alert all our farmers. It is not just using dry cassava peel. Please and please, this is poison to the livestock. If you use just cassava peel, you collect it from where they are processing gari, and you went there to go and collect cassava peel, and you grinded it. You're putting your livestock in at risk. It is poison. It contains cyanide, though it is dry, but the cyanide is still in there. But the peel is supposed to be processed immediately, the same day, within a matter of 12 to 48 and 24 hours that the peel is done. It is grinded, and once it's grinded, they place it on this pressure jack to squeeze out all the cyanide content and water that is in there. Within that 24, it is after that 24 hours that it is good enough to use on the livestock. If they dry it thereafter, even if it is left for some days before they dry it, it is still okay. But it should go through that process within 24 hours. Please and please, all our livestock farmers, do not use ordinary peel cassava without being processed. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Engineer Latero. I have a question here from Mob Kilishi. How feasible is a government set up poultry industry conglomerate in Nigeria? I imagine that this person means that a conglomerate that brings different people in the poultry value chain, from those preparing the feed to those poultry farmers and other stakeholders. Mr. Akpa, please. What are your thoughts on this? Mr. Akpa, I think you're muted, so we can't hear you.
Hello, you can hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
You can hear me now. Well, I don't know what the person who asked the question means. There are conglomerates, those who have integrated poultry production office in this country, like the GHI group, the sheep farms. we have the Zatec. These are people who does their own feed mill. These are people who have their breeders. These are people who have their hatcheries, and they also have their rearing operations. They still do processing and still do marketing. These are the big guys that are with integrated operations. It's not limited to Zatec, it's not limited to sheep farms. There is also the Obasanjo farm, there is the farm, there is the Valentine farm. My very good friend and uncle there, Jim also has a breeder farm, he has hatcheries, and he also does egg. I know he does them some years back, and I still believe he's still in the options. So if it is what the questionnaire, the person who asked the question meant, then we have a lot of big conglomerate of production activities. They do their feed, they do all kinds of things, and then they still sell the final poultry products to the public. If that's on his answer. But I also want to come to the issue of this alternative feed. It was unfortunate that the was bad when you asked me some questions. I've seen in some environment other than the cassava fields, where people, especially in Malaysia, in Germany, and some parts of Europe, where people process palm oil into powder. We call it beggar fat. And you know, this contains a lot of energy. Now we have a lot of palm oil industry. If we can have palm oil processing factories where they can convert palm oil into powder, you know, it gives us a lot of, although it is not going to do a total replacement, but it can do a percentage inclusion. A lot of people have brought in some in, a lot of people have used them, and then they work, especially for production, beggar fat. Now, I have also seen in America, especially, where sorghum is being used as complete replacement for maize. A lot of research on alternative feeds can be done by the specialist nutritionists. And then some years back, I remembered in 2006, 2007, we had a problem. A lot of people brought in what we call the feed-grade wheat. The feed-grade wheat can do total replacement for maize. But that is not to say that we don't have the capacity to produce all this being needed in this country, both for human and animal consumption. If today the per capita consumption of poultry meat per every Nigerian is around 2.53 kilo per annum, as compared to some country like Malaysia having 63 kg per person, US having 58 kg per person, Brazil having 57 kg per person. If we are able to achieve just only 50%, you discover that if the total maize being produced annually in this country is just 13 million, then you discover that the maize need of the poultry industry alone will go as much as 9 million to 10 million metric tons in a year. So I will have other plans. To me, what government needs to do is to do commercial agriculture, because invariably what we are getting as maize from the farmers today is not from commercial maize farming, it's from the family farms. So if we are able to do commercial maize production activities in the country, we'll be able to produce good enough maize for almost 2 million Nigerians, household consumption, industrial use, and for the poultry farm. So we need to go back to our planning stages. I could understand in those days in the college, we used to in basic economics, we used to have what we call development plans. Let's go to the area of development plan. What is going to be our focus in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, both at the industrial level, the agricultural level, and at the general economic level? Then if we are able to do this, we put systems in place to be able to address this. Then, like I said earlier, nobody is in importation. It has a lot of hazards. So if we are able to produce all we need in this country, then we are better for it. We are better for it. Every we show now graduates who have no jobs. The unemployment rate is increasing on a daily basis. Insecurity is increasing because people have nothing to do. So we need to go back to basically the planning stages. If we do that and engage almost 30 to 40% of the unemployed graduates and people in agriculture, and we'll be able to produce maize. There is virtually no part of this country that you cannot do maize. So why should maize be our problem? But in policy, we should also try to do, the house was not on fire. There was emergency. And if there was an emergency, and you say, okay, bring in, we apply for 2 million, we can give you 500,000, ample opportunity to can put in monitoring and evaluation stage, monitor that these things is not brought beyond what we applied for, then we would have solved this problem. Today, the problems are being created in the because of the scarcity of maize. People are closing down farm. People are being thrown into the unemployment market. A lot of livelihood are being deprived. So what are we saying? So in policy, we should do deeper consultation. Deeper consultation doesn't mean that we need to sit down for 2, 3, 5 weeks. Input for a meeting, let everybody make input. Then we have a midway that is better for all of us. Because whether we agree or not, the livestock industry contributes almost 70 to 80% of the agricultural GDP of this country. And it is not what we need to toy with. And we should also be very, very careful so that we don't start crying because some people have decided to make things difficult for some other people, because the international community are waiting for the ban to be lifted so that they can bring in their fish, they can bring in their frozen chicken, and they can bring in the table eggs. Then if we allow this to be done, then where are we? So this is my contribution.
Thank you very much, Mr. Akpa. Thank you for that contribution. So the last question I'll be answering. Engineer Lateru, where can farmers get the right seeds to grow maize in Nigeria today? Please, 1 minute, because we're already behind time.
Thank you very much. I was watching the panelists yesterday, and where they were, we have the National Seed Council, and we have Pioneer, who is one of the seed producer in the country. I believe he represented them. And you can imagine the challenges they are facing. Traditionally, we're supposed to be able to get the proper seed from either Premier Seed or this Pioneer seed. I think there are some other company that the club is another one of them. But you see, from what we gathered yesterday on the discussions in this platform, we find out that even the ban on the importation affects those that are in the seed industry. And it is like the whole ban is, there is no distinction between the grain and the seed. So now, the seed, those in the seed production line, they are complaining now that they are limited. And so with the maximum capacity they can produce now is not even up to 30% of our requirement right now. So even if based on the volume of the farmers that the CBN said they are financing as of now, seed that is available is like about 30 to 40% of those people. So the question yesterday was that where do these 60% get their seed from? That means they are using grain, of which they cannot expect much, like maybe 1 ton, 1.5 tons on an hectare of land. So the whole thing still boil out to synergy, because the National Seed Council, they were there on the platform yesterday. They said they are hampered. And so the thing is, everybody needs to come on board. The kind of way where you do your own, I do my own, I think that time, it has to be the time of the past. We have to approach, we should go away from firefighting approach, because I believe what we are doing now is firefighting. You fix this problem to create a multiple problem. Even the one you are fixing, you didn't do the homework well to find out, is all the necessary materials ready for these people? Can we actually sustain it? The answer is no. So, we should have, first of all, addressed the basic, like the panelists said yesterday. Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Engineer Lateru. So we have almost come to the end of this. I just want to give Mr. Jesse and Mr. Blessing 30 seconds each, please, 30 seconds. Just to say final words, anything about the future, what you're looking forward to. 30 seconds, Mr. Jesse.
Hi, thank you. And thank you to everyone, Gigi, Mr. Tunde, Mr. John, Mr. Bearden, and Mrs. Blessing, Mr. Akpa. Quick one. I think literally for me, it's more about to agriculture from ways to something more precise, precision farming, modern agricultural techniques, from the production angle, which is basically just making sure that the right seeds are given to the right farmers, we can actually produce on a commercial scale. Also have the security side of making sure these farmers are secured, they can go to their farm anytime and come out from their farms without being hampered. Also, if we cannot provide, if we don't have to depend on rains for our crops to grow, we can find how we can see how irrigation can actually make this work out quickly. Also look into research and development. And that's also actually from the production angle. The consumption side is actually saying, okay, fine, how can we give data to make sure that we understand the kind of numbers we need at every particular given time. So I think literally it's just bring everybody to the same table, CBN, production side and consumption side, and see how we can actually make this thing work. I'm in support of what the ban, but systematically, so that everyone can actually be in view and we can see how we can mitigate the problems. But for right now, for those who are in the alternative feed production, let's see how we can also give information out and see what we can do on a commercial scale. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jesse. Mrs. Blessing, 10 seconds. Mr. Jesse already took out of your time.
Okay, so I just want to say that in all of this, an average farmer expects intervention by the CBN, who to a large extent is a factor in creating this problem, to see how, as much as possible, they can mitigate the loss of an average poultry farmer at the moment. For those in the research and working on the alternative feed, ensure it's available at the right price, at the right quality, because we know the poultry are smaller animals. They are not able to cope with a lot of stress. And so any wrong move can bring down a whole poultry, can bring down a poultry farm down. So whatever they are given as the alternative must be viable, must be right, and must be available at commercial quantity. A lot of farmers, yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So thank you to everyone for attending this session. I hope you found it informative. I apologize for not answering all the questions. We were out of time. The recording of this webinar will be made available on the Wandeville Media YouTube page. So just look it up when you want to. And we will also send it to your emails after this session. Thank you everybody for joining us. And thank you to our panelists, Mr. Biodo, Engineer Lateru, Mr. Apa, Dr. Mole, Mrs. Blessing, and Mr. Jesse. Thank you so much. And I hope we all enjoy the rest of our days.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is it logging out?